On this episode of Raising the Wild Ones podcast, Adam Farris is here with us today, and correct me, Adam, if I missed something, but you're a graphic novelist, which is really cool.
Probably the easiest way to say what I do is I'm trying to put better visuals to Bible stories. And this is a led journey too. You know, I don't want to pat myself on the back because this is God, working through me. Well, it's scary how much is literally being glossed over, man. It really is, because I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say a lot of these stories aren't making the sense that they're supposed to. You know, we're at 2025, we think great, being like, Adam's a great dude, he's a good guy. But when you read it, it never matches that. Well, in Hebrew, it's Gadol. Jonah was swallowed by a dag Gadol, a fish of great size, right? Abram and Ishmael were promised to be over Goy Gadols, nations of great size. They weren't great nations, you know what I mean?
Raising the Wild Ones podcast.
Hey, Caleb, you want to start us off, or do you want me to do it all awkward?
Welcome to the Raising the Wild Ones podcast with your hosts, Dustin and Caleb.
It's like you're an automatic guy. I just think it cracks me up.
Yeah.
Well, we've got Adam Farris is here with us today, and correct me, Adam, if I missed something, but you're a graphic novelist, which is really cool. Anyway, and that's really fancy. That's like so fancy to say, right? You also got a YouTube page where you're starting to throw stuff up now. So you're starting to do like some. You also got a vlog. No, just a regular blog, right? I guess the YouTube page is a vlog. That's kind of what it is. But Adam's a guy, which this is really neat. I thought it was interesting. He sent us an email. I guess it was a couple months back, just kind of talking about some of the stuff you heard on the podcast. So for everybody else out there listening, we do answer our emails. We do it. and so he sent us an email, and we just got chatting with him and thought, hey man, be a cool guy to come on and just kind of talk to. And so for those on YouTube, I got his book right here. Been looking at it, some good stuff. And so he's got two of these working on. One of them's David and Goliath, the other one's Noah. The first one's 5 Stones, and that's David and Goliath. It's just some really cool stuff, and I've probably talked too much about Adam. Adam, you can talk about yourself now. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right, appreciate that. That was a good intro. I'm Adam Farris. I'm a writer and a biblical researcher. Probably the easiest way to say what I do is I'm trying to put better visuals to Bible stories. And this is a led journey too. You know, I don't want to pat myself on the back because this is God, working through me. 3 years ago, I was just a normal guy, distribution center manager, had been a manager for 13 years at that time, and was really getting burnt out in my career. And September 22, my father passed unexpectedly. And through all of that, all those couple of months is essentially when this all went down. When I initially felt the urge to write and didn't understand it. And then eventually I was just in my mind dissecting David and Goliath, just trying to figure out what it really looked like. And, I have a religious background. I was born and raised in the church. I left at 17. So, I've got a foundation of understanding, but I've always had a lot of questions, basically same questions we all have. And so that's kind of it hit, and I was driven to really, really deep dive into the Bible stories, and what initially came out, like I said, was 5 Stones and all this crazy research.
I'm sitting here looking at it. I guess it's on your blog. Where did you learn to draw like this?
Oh, so I didn't actually do the drawing. I did.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
Yeah, I wrote the script and I did the coloring.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's, again, so when it went down, and I had this, I knew I had the urge to do some kind of Bible stories. I didn't know what I could do. I can't draw. So, you know what I mean? So I was just trying to figure out what I could do. And I wanted to do some kind of visual, and initially I was looking into animation and whatnot. And I was kind of led in the direction to do graphic novels. I was born and raised on comics. I love comics. So that kind of was like, how could I reach me kind of thing. So I reached out and, got an artist and ran the script by him. And that's kind of how that went down.
I
I'll
got you.
say
And
I,
it's cool. Yeah, it's cool because my son, my oldest son, which he's 9, he's drawn. We've talked about it on here before. Like at this point, probably thousands of small, like graphic novels and comics and different things. So it's cool to look at this. I'm going to have to show him some of this. He'll be excited to listen to you.
well, and there's even kind of one thing you said, and I really like the way you said it. Like, how can I reach me? I mean, that's an interesting way because then I sat there and thought about like how would I like tell Dustin when he was a teenager about Jesus? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a really neat perspective. Little side note there, but man, I like that idea. I like that thought process too.
I appreciate that. And that's how it hit. Cause like I could, I have the religious background. So I could put the pieces together that God was calling me to do something. And I literally was like, I don't know, what can I do? Like,
Mhm.
well, I feel it. And, he comes to you when you're at your worst, right? That's how
Mhm.
the things go. So I'm like, I hear it, man. I'm down. What can I do? So I start just thinking about media. What is there? You got movies, you got television, you got written, you got, all this stuff. And then I'm applying what my skill set is, and it's like, all right, I can do some coloring and like this, but what is going to really grab everybody's attention? Because I could feel like this was something different, especially like uh the direction I was being led for the research. I knew this was going to be a different thing. So that's when it hit me was like, if I was approached with a really true, visually true to the story, you know, biblical graphic novel, that would get me because that was always my thing growing up in the church was like we're reading these things and we're not getting the gravity of the actual story, and then plus like, mainstream doesn't even talk about Gen 6, so you don't get the meats and potato.
Yeah.
So that's really, like you said, that's what hit me was like, all right, if I feel like you're telling me to get into this thing like gritty and what it really looked like, that makes sense for it to be like a wild graphic novel, not holding back any details, because then it's like, what does this giant really look like? I've never believed that he just looked like this normal guy, just taller than everybody else. The story doesn't make sense like that. So yeah, so that was the nutshell with that was how to actually put it into people's hands and they see it for what it is. Because Adam Farris, I hate to. Dr. Randall Smith says it perfectly. Whatever irritates you the most is your calling. Um, Beyond misinterpretation and miscommunication, I hate to be compared to other people, right? Like it's a thing with me. So it was like, how can this thing really stand out and not be a normal David and Goliath story? Because I think we can all agree, yes, it is a great story, but Hollywood, no one's done it justice. No one's really got what it
Yeah.
looked like.
Yeah.
You know, think about and to bounce out a little bit, but think about the first time Marvel put some blood in it in one of their episodes. Bam! Everybody took it very serious. Like Logan. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it was. I felt that direction. Like it needed to be real and raw.
Well, and it's even kind of you talk about David and Goliath. It's like so I've been in children's ministry, I've been in youth ministry, and I've taught the VBS version of David and Goliath where it stops right before David cuts his head off. And it's like that part's in there. It's like there's the part where he cuts his head off, holds it up, and then everybody goes and kills all the rest of them. And it's like, well, no, but
We
and
should send him we had a live group one Sunday and we made
yeah.
an AI version, like a coloring page of that where it's little David holding up Goliath's head. So you should
It's
send
like
him that one.
nobody makes the kid coloring page of like David's head, holding the head up of Goliath. But it's like, Because I mean, the only thing I thought about is right, because it's gritty. Some of these stories are gritty and they're real. It's like, what is it? It's Deborah that kills the judge with the tent peg, right? Is it Deborah, the
Yes, yeah.
judge that?
It's not Deborah, but that's the
Oh yeah.
story where it
Yeah,
happens. It's Timnah,
yeah,
and
Yeah.
oh
and
yeah,
yes, and to your point, when this, so I initially just read. I read the David, First Samuel, Second Samuel. I read that back to back, back, just trying to get the rhythm and the patterns, and that to explain my background better with distribution. I feel like God was using that as training on how to eventually research the Bible, because in distribution you order a tire and it doesn't show up. It didn't just disappear, right? Like I have to find where that tire went. And I learned in those years, like life is black and white. It either happened or it didn't happen. You know what I mean? Like cloud seeding. Every book that we've ever read says that clouds are natural. Skies, blah, this atmosphere. So there's going to be no explanation to why cloud seeding exists, right? So and that's a crazy example, but everything's black and white. So this is how I attack, my research. And it's like, all right, so I'm reading this story and then the five stones, right, keep standing out to me. It's like, what? It blatantly says he grabs five stones. Why do we only focus on the one? So I'm like, okay, I'm catching the rhythm here, how this story is if I may be so bold, is being misinterpreted on purpose, right? Because the Gen 6 is not just a couple lines in the beginning of Genesis. It's not what it is. Everyone's beat that drum, so everybody knows Gen 6. But what I suggest is that's what this entire, at least the Old Testament, is about, is how Gen 6 set up what has happened to humans. Because if you think about it, Gen 6, but then in First Corinthians 11:10, I was trying to get out.
Yeah.
Um, they women have to have power over their head because of the angels. So angels were still coming down. But if you look at Ezekiel and Daniel, it shows that kings were former angels. So this whole thing, it was has just it's never stopped. You know how there's the question of, was it the first, um the word just escaped me. But the first incursion, and then there's another
oh,
incursion.
that,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, it just never stopped. It never
So,
completely stopped. And that's when I'm reading this story, I just keep finding more giants and more hybrids. And it's like, oh, what's going on here?
so,
So,
so to, oh no, I was also going to bring it back is the five stones. I mean, what do you think was the significance in the five stones?
that, oh my gosh, right off the bat, once you get past David killing Goliath, David and then one of the sons of Zariah, one of his nephews, and then one of his mighty men, they kill the rest of Goliath's family. And it's exactly four giants that are
Okay.
killed. Right? I'm a patterns and trends guy. This is the way that I look at things. So I see that. And again, if you, like I said, look at everything black and white. It either happened or it didn't. And if it did, you will find pieces. You will find a pattern. He grabbed five stones. There was one Goliath, and then
Hmm.
later on, he killed four more. So that's the five. I'll take that to my grave. Like that's the
Interesting.
five. So why
I've
did he
heard that.
grab
I've
those?
heard that one before too. Is
Yes.
that the five brothers? I've kind of heard that.
Yes. And why did he grab them? Because they were there. They were there. Because again, this is a story about faith. In my 3 year journey of studying the Bible and David and seeing the significance of David, he was a very, very, very strong-willed, strong person. He basically was raised not being loved and having to fend for himself. And then once he made it, he had to run from the guy that was there when he made it because he was trying to kill him. And then his kids tried to kill him. When he was 14, he killed a bear and a lion by hand. And then you remember he didn't get to build the temple because Solomon got to build the temple
Hmm.
because of his the war in his heart. Like that was David. He was a bad dude. So he didn't grab 5 stones because he was going to miss. He and in 5 stones, my book 5 stones. So I took some liberties to make it a punchy story and to really, for my first book, I wanted to make some waves. Um, so I don't change anything, but I focus on certain points. I don't do the armor part with Saul because in 5 stones in my book, David walks up, sees Goliath running his mouth, and he kills Goliath. Because I wanted to give the emphasis of how strong he was and how faith driven he was. Because again, if either one of us at 14 years old killed a bear by hand or a lion by hand, we you wouldn't be
I
able to
mean,
tell us nothing, man.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. I
So
killed a deer when I was 14, and I was
Yeah.
pretty big stuff.
see, so right off the bat, the story is not being told correctly, in my opinion. If I can again be so bold, because dude was again, he didn't get to make the temple because he was just a warlord. Um, David's mighty men, if we do get to that today, I've done super deep research on those guys, but the way they all accumulated around him was just by reputation. And that again speaks to David because these were giants and lion men and deadly assassins, people from different countries. And it wasn't like, hey guys, I'm doing this thing. Y'all want to walk with me? No, they were just there while he was doing it. And even some of them, he told them, hey, you don't want none of this. And they're like, yeah, we're with you. So, you know what I mean? So I'm doing my research and I'm seeing that this is a super deep story. You know, the Amalekites, I really needed to touch base on the Amalekites, because that I walking into this, I've heard that misunderstanding, God's just a genocidal God, blah. Excuse me. So that needed to be cleared up. And plus, too, I don't know how much research and deep diving you guys done on the Amalekites, but that's some nasty people. And that story too goes really, really far also. So yeah, I mean it was a super complex and Nephilim never stops. Giants, you can see it all the way through the entire thing. So again, I feel like that's what my calling is to just put better visuals and help explain these stories and for what they really are and who the people are.
So, what other coming? I don't know. I guess my mind's just stuck with David and Goliath at the moment. But what else, I mean, other than the 5 stones, kind of stood out to you in your reading? Kind of like that idea of like that constant reading of the scripture to see the patterns and the importance and almost like maybe the cadence of
Hmm.
scripture. And so, what else other than the 5 stones stood out towards you in that one?
Yeah, I don't know if you can see it, but this page right here, the one is with Samuel killing King Agag. I
Oh,
literally, yes, when I read that. So what I did, man, I had again, growing up in the church, you hear these stories and you have somewhat of an understanding. I tried to go into it blank slate, pretend like I hadn't heard these stories, and I wanted to like catch it fresh. Every time,
that one, right?
yes,
Yeah. We can't
yes,
see it on your screen, but I can pull it up and show
perfect.
YouTube right there. Yeah.
Every time
I
I
don't know if
read
I
it,
sent that one to you, Caleb.
I'm pretty
I
sure you
saw
did. I'm look.
blue.
Yeah, here it is.
I saw blue and red every time I read that. I saw those colors. It was like isolated to me. For so many different reasons. One, like I was again coming in fresh to the aggressiveness in the Bible that is missed. I've no one in my lifetime has ever been when during talking about David and Goliath been like, oh yeah, and Samuel like chopped the dude in half too.
Hmm.
But it has everything to do with it, right? Because that was the straw that broke the camel, and that's why Saul lost favoring from God because he let King Agag go. And then it's like, all right, well, who's King Agag? And then you go down that rabbit hole of um cannibals and lickers of blood and hybrid humans and all that craziness. So it's like, all right, how do I bring all this in? Plus two, like skin tones. We all hear about the six-fingered um giants, the red skin, the blunt pale, the red hair. So I tried to incorporate that too. I wanted it to like literally be like, you know, it was written then and there was visuals then of the giants and they weren't just normal humans with a beard or whatever. Um Also too is really interesting. I tried to put an arc in with Goliath. First time you see him, he's just kind of, leather, a little bit of steel, ragtags. The next time you see him, he's fully coated suit of armor. Because in my research, I started catching a pattern that we were no longer scared of giants. We were working with giants. They were incorporated in to our normal life. And it's like, okay, well, you know, all of those things hit at the same time. The fall of the Bronze Age, the beginning of the Iron Age, the sea people came to land, becoming the Philistines. The Philistines are not just one group. There's just this crazy motley of sea people. And then a key thing with Goliath, there's a lot of speculation on whether he was a king or not. But I stay in the Bible. I don't take from any other book whatsoever. On purpose. My research, and you got to have a standard. You know what I mean? You got to have
Hmm.
a thing. So I am dissecting the thing to get the truth, and then it can be applied from there. But uh lost track. So yeah, I'm sorry. So that's when I started noticing like Solomon transcripted the his labor forces from the leftover inhabitants of the promised land. But when you look in numbers, what was the report of the giant? Report from the spies was giants. So
Hmm.
Solomon transcripted those tribes for his workforce, for his temples, and his buildings and whatnot. And he had 70,000 stone carriers, 80,000 stone cutters. So, you know what I mean? Oh, that's what I was gonna say. So, um, it's reckoned that Goliath was a king, but when he recognizes himself to David, what does he say? Am I not a Philistine? Are you not a servant of Saul? That's a level. We're on the same level here. You know what I mean? I feel like, and I can be wrong, it's all good. He would have acknowledged himself as a king. He would have said, I'm here. You do got to do what I say, blah, blah, blah. He didn't. He came on a level to level playing field and recognized himself as a Philistine, which we know Philistine is just a group of people put together. So that told me it was like he was just workforce. He was just a battering ram in the front. So if you go through my story, there's a lot of subliminals. I never even say the name Goliath. It's not
Hmm.
even in the book at all. Man, I'm telling you, like you gotta. I tried to match the Bible's a parable. The Bible is vague enough to get you interested, so you'll research it and you look into it. I tried to do that with Five Stones and put a lot of subliminal stuff in there to kind of just make people think.
So
So
you kind of took the approach, say like The Chosen, where they're going to give you the basic story, but maybe they take maybe it's a little different here and there. Maybe there's some extra stuff added. Maybe there's some stuff missing, but at the same time, it's pointing you back to the scriptures to say, hey, this is an awesome story. Let's go back to the scriptures and read what it says.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Trying to connect some dots, but also like still keep it interesting. Because again, I couldn't. It doesn't make sense to me to just have a giant. Where did he come from? You just one? You know what I mean? Like, does he have a family? Does he not have a family? Is there more? Like, that's as a writer, that's a open ended. You got to have that.
Yeah, and we've talked about this quite a bit on this on our podcast. But so, what do you think about as far as and you can real quick on this? We've talked about the first incursion and another incursion. Do you think that was the reason of the flood, was to get rid of these giants or the Nephilim? And then, or do you think that was just man was bad, so he had caused the flood, or God sent the flood? What do you think about that?
So I think genealogy has a huge part in this, like a phenomenally large part. The flood was the worst of the worst, the bad of the bad. Probably dinosaurs, like just crazy, the giants of the tallest of the tall. Every bad thing you can think of. But I try to look at it super complex to get every little piece. Now, the basis of life is free will. Basis of everything is free will. Even angels, it's free will. I could see that if you could get in a deep enough cavern, or you could get over here, you get on here, I could see people surviving the flood, because that's not the way that, unless God wants specific people to die, and there's plenty of those stories. This was a reset. You know what I mean? Because you know, now I do think that the Bible is very specific that Noah was a good man. He was a good man. Noah was a good man. But Noah had a family, and it would have said that Noah's family was good people. It would have said that. Oh, it was a bunch of good people. He raised them right. It didn't say that. It said Noah was a good man. And then what happens as soon as they get off the boat? And it's tricky in the pattern of the way it's mentioned. And I've gone over this thing a million times. So they get off the boat, everything's normal. We know the story. He gets a vineyard, he gets drunk, Ham sees him. They hadn't had kids yet, right? They just got off the boat. It's kind of the way that the pattern of the story goes. Um, Before they even have kids, not Genesis 9:18, Ham, father of Canaan. And then blah, blah, blah. And then Genesis 9:22, again, Ham, father of Canaan, saw him naked. They didn't have kids yet. Why are they talking about his youngest son, not his oldest son? You know what I mean? That's not the normal pattern when people are named and listed. So, and then the curse doesn't get to now to 25, and they've already mentioned his kid. But if you notice, that's his youngest kid. And you think about Isaac and Jacob. Think about the blessings. Esau, who got the blessing, who didn't get the blessing. I believe that Ham's genealogy was already corrupt. And that's the thing about free will is, he could have been good. He wasn't. A curse came upon him. He already had messed up genealogy. And that's why, again, going with the pattern, when you look at how everybody's listed from him, they don't have they don't have names of who they are, because that's the generally, if you don't get into the Bible, it's bad blood or whatever. But if you look at it, they're listed as what they are. The Jebusites, the Girgashites. You know what I mean? When it's talking about them. So that's more evidence of it being genealogy. Because what that is telling you is again, the Hebrew language at that point wasn't just like, I'm Adam, nice to meet you. I would be named for something, right? Jacob was named because he grabbed, Esau's heel when he came out. So these guys are listed as what they are. They're bad, bad, bad. The Jebusites are the trodden underfoot and the down tramplers. The Hittites are the terrible ones. I believe it's genealogy. And then you get to Lot with the lion men. I think it just continuously happens. And that's why, if you even look, it even gets to the book of Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther. Like it's still like Ezra, the book of Ezra is talking about the exiled Israelites. And it's talking about intermarriage with the Amorites, the Jebusites, like all the giant people. And then in Nehemiah, literally, they list all of the people in the temple that intermarried with the Canaanite people. In Esther, Haman is an Agagite.
Oh yeah, I think I remember reading about
Yes,
old Haman.
and he comes from the genealogy of King Agag. So it's genius. That's
That's
and I
interesting.
can go with so many different more like examples, but like I think that is literally like how at least the Old Testament, that's how this is broke down. Gen 6, this happened because it says it. The men of renown, right? The men that the stories have been wrote about. Well, what stories were written? The rest of the Old Testament, Greek mythology, all of that stuff that was being written was that. And again, it just continuously happens all the way through the Bible. It's just genealogy, and and that's something too. I used to think about it as a kid was like that's a little rough to say that you can't intermarry. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
That's not what it means. It means you can't hook up with these tribes. Because these are the corrupt Nephilim bloodlines. And we got to stop them. That has to stop. And that's, again, to go back to Five Stones, that was the significance of Samuel killing King Agag, is because that is Nephilim blood. Has to stop. And I was like, that's a huge part of this story. Why isn't that incorporated in there? So, what I mean? It had
Well,
to be in
and it's really interesting stuff when you start kind of breaking it down into the idea like we were talking about Caleb with like first incursion, second incursion, or however it works down, and then you start looking at, Noah's kids and stuff like that. You start what's I've heard one story that the giant, what's his name? The dude with the 14-foot metal bed frame,
Og,
like
King Og.
King Og, like, clung to the ark and like Noah threw him scraps off the side of the boat. Like, and I've heard that, and it's like, come on, guys. It's like you sit there and you think about all these different stories to kind of explain this event of how did the Giants come back. And as a kid, I remember like sitting there reading this story and nobody's like even talking or even trying to even converse about some of these topics of like what happened, how did it happen, where did they
there.
come from. And that's interesting when you're bringing it back to the genealogies and pulling it back. That's a really interesting, looking at the Bible from a genealogical point of view is really, it's a way that I've probably never looked at the Bible through that way, and that's
Yeah,
just an
and
interesting way.
most people just when they're reading it skip over the genealogies and go to the something else that's more exciting to read.
Yeah. Well, we'll
Yeah.
we'll take this example. So, Gadol, Gadol. It's a Hebrew word. So in the Bible, most times when you see great, it does not mean what we think it means. We're at 2025. We think great mean like, Adam's a great dude. He's a good guy. But when you read it, it never matches that. Well, in Hebrew, it's Gadol. Jonah was swallowed by a Dagadol, a fish of great size, right? Abram and Ishmael were promised to be over Goy Gadols, nations of great size. They weren't great nations, you know what I mean? So and that's a really fun part about my research is learning like what the Hebrew language is different, man. You got to take it, it's very descriptive. So in the Lot story in Sodom, the angels, remember the two angels came down, and we know what
Yeah.
everybody was saying to the angels. And I get into that.
Hmm.
But it says specifically, it says, um, remember they blind everybody, but it says they blind the small and the great. Blah blah blah, blind the small and the great, da da da. In Hebrew, that's Catan and Gadol, meaning the people of small size and the people of great size. So if you take that for what it is, that's Nephilim genealogy, because Gen 6 again is our marker. It's our reference point. What is the fingerprint of Nephilim? Height, right? So you've got that in Sodom, and then Lot was single before he got to Sodom. He met his wife in Sodom, had his children in Sodom. They leave. We know the pillar of salt thing because that was her family, right? That's where she came from. That's her people. So you know what happened next? Lot goes and his daughters trick him, and they have uh, incest and have kids, and that's where the Moabites and the Ammonites come from. Now we know the lion-faced men of Moab. We know that there's plenty of evidence of lion men, um, and that's where that comes from. So you looking at a genealogy, you've got this tainted bloodline with possible Nephilim DNA. You've got Nephilim there in Sodom with the Catan and Gadol. Then you have the incest, and atavism is a word that I like to use. It's basically um, benign traits being kicked off after a certain stressor, and you can revert to animal-like traits, or it can be like hidden DNA, schizophrenia, red hair, but it has to be a specific stressor to kick those off. So if Lot's wife had tainted blood and passed it to the children, that incest was enough to kick it off to spur the lion-like men of Moab. Now, Deuteronomy 23 says specifically, um, the Ammonites and the Moabites are not allowed in the temple even after the 10th generation. So that means that is, and you know that you can't get into the temple if you're not pure blood, if you're damaged or in any fashion. So that means the Ammonite and Moabites are not looked at as completely humans, and also some bloodlines can be born out, and some can't be, right? Because after the 10th generation, there's still Ammonites and Moabites. So look at it like that from just a scientific aspect of how there were lion-faced men of Moab.
And that's are you looking that up, Caleb? I totally
Yes,
Googled.
I was literally just looking it up because yeah,
Second
that's
Samuel, right? Are you reading it?
yes. I'll go ahead and read it real quick. So, which this is just kind of the passage you were talking about where it says I'll skip part of it with the hard names, but it says he had killed two lion-like heroes of Moab. He also had gone down and killed a lion in the midst of a pit on a snowy day. So, what do you think the lion-like men or lion-like heroes? What does that mean?
Yes, and that's great that you brought it up just like that. So it's translation. Translation's
Mhm.
huge in the name of this game. So that line, you'll either get lion-faced men of Moab and killed a lion. You'll either get that line, or you'll get like what you just said, or you'll get two giants from Moab. There are also certain, and I used to know them. I used to be better than better than that, but certain translations say that killed two Ariels from Moab. So it's basically the way I look at it is the worse it sounds is probably the way it is.
Well, I mean that's really interesting when you kind of bring the worse it sounds, because I mean you can get back to the whole idea. I mean we just did an episode with a Hebrew guy talking about just translation of just sons of God, and just looking at like those words they used to translate that and the translation of Nephilim, and then even going back and talking about the Hebrew or the Septuagint, the
Mhm,
Greek translation of the Old Testament,
mhm.
and kind of looking at these different passages and how they're different translated, and how, I mean, I'm a Greek guy, so I'm not a Hebrew guy, so I can look into the Greek, and so I love looking at like New Testament passages, going, there's like multiple different ways to translate this word. Why did we choose to translate this word this way here? But over here, it's this way, and it's just translation. I mean, it's so fun and so interesting to really get into and to look at. That's what I was trying to see what different versions of the Bible translated that Second
Well,
Samuel passage.
that's
Yeah.
that's how I knew. I mean, because like stuff like that, man, I'm a real guy. Like these kind of things, like I didn't know what this was about. I just knew I had to do it, and I'm like researching and looking into the Bible, and I'm finding this crazy stuff. And then it's eventually clicked. I'm like, I'm supposed to be talking about this stuff. We're supposed to be talking about this because, like, the stories, the stories don't have the same gravity if we're not taking those pieces into consideration, right? Like Isaiah 34:14, when they mention the Seir, the he goat. Well, certain translations say wild goats. So if you don't get he goat, then wild goats. Yeah, Edom, the point of the story still gets across, but you're not getting what God wanted us to know. You know what I mean? Um, think about the story with Nabal and Abigail and David. Remember, David's men stopped and asked Nabal for help, and Nabal said no. Then he died, and then David married Abigail and had a kid. Blah blah blah. Well, even the description of Nabal don't make sense. It says Nabal was a great man. He had plenty of sheep, and that he was a churlish and evil man because he was a Calebite. Well, was he great or was he evil? Right? Like that doesn't make sense. Like, if you just look grammatically, that doesn't make sense because that's not what they're saying. He's an Ishgadal. Remember that word. He is a man of great size from um uh a land from the promised land left over. Because remember when David's men say to him, we haven't had any trouble. Everything's been cool. Just we're looking if you can give us some help. What they were saying was, remember, we were driving all of you out of this land. Some of you left or stayed over. We haven't had any trouble. Can you help us out? So this was a giant left over that's been domesticated and living in the land. And also, I don't know how much you guys have gone down with like dogmen stuff, like Caleb and all that, but that's just another branch that,
That's you,
why else
Caleb.
would you, why else?
Yeah, Rook, what are you talking about on that one?
Man, this we can go deep because it's crazy genealogy. So you look at um how the story goes, what they're saying. So Caleb in Hebrew it means dog or unsophisticated servant. It's really crazy how this goes, man. So Caleb, you remember Caleb and Joshua, they're the only two of the 12 spies that believed that they could go in. And then they're the ones that they took the torch from Moses when they got into the land. And Joshua and Caleb did most of the beat downs with all the giants and whatnot. Well, the first judge of Israel is named Othniel. Othniel is the son of Kenaz, Caleb's brother. Kenaz is a Kenizzite, and Kenizzite is one of the, um, excuse me, tribes that had to be driven out from the Promised Land. Translated, Kenizzite is hunter of men. Kenaz is means a hunter or trapper, and Othniel broke down means violent lion of God or for God, whatever. So you've got Caleb, dog. You got Kenaz, mighty hunter, and then you've got Othniel, a lion, symbolism of lion, coming from a tribe from the promised land that had to be driven out.
So so it all kind of comes down on those ones to like the meaning of the names. I mean,
Yes.
that's really interesting because I mean you're absolutely right taking it from our context of my name's Dustin. I have no idea what my name means. I know it's Scottish somewhere, but
Yes.
it's like back then, I mean, there were even times where if something would happen, you would change your name, or I think that's the Asian culture does that. Like if there's a giant big thing in your life, you change your name to symbolize these things because names aren't as important to us, but to especially in biblical times they're important. And I mean even just the small thing from Saul going from being called Saul to Paul in the New Testament, it's like it symbolizes the change that God did in Saul. And so
Well, Abram was hanging out with Amorite giants. Abram had three giant Amorite giant buddies that he was hanging out with. He set up camp by the Oaks of Mamre. Those giants went with him to get Lot. Remember the battle 4 versus 5 kings, and then God said you're going to go into the promised land. You're going to be great nations. These tribes will need to be driven out from the land. The Amorites have not realized their evil yet. And then he becomes Abraham, to your point with the name change. And then that's when all the bad guys become bad guys and they had to get driven out.
that's interesting. Well, kind of to throw back to an earlier point, I got sidetracked, and so I started looking through all of my Bibles trying to find one because you said Ariel's on that Second Samuel passage, and I remember reading that, and so I was like, I got a Bible here somewhere where it says that, and it's the Revised Standard Version is the one that says that, or at least that's the Bible that I had says, and it says he smote two Ariels of Moab, and then so I'm like, cool, all right, Dustin, I'm gonna Google Ariels and see what it says, and I Google it and came up with a note of it came up with the meaning of the word Ariel is unknown. And I'm like, great, this is so helpful.
Yeah. But
But it's just this interesting dynamic in translations. And I mean it gets some wild stuff.
well, it's scary how much is literally being glossed over, man. It
Hmm.
really is because I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say a lot of these stories aren't making the sense that they're supposed to. You know what I mean? Again, this is a lead thing. This is not an Adam thing. Is I feel like I'm trying to do what I was told to do, and we're missing a lot of details on these stories. And again, I mean, if like lion lion faced men, right? Like, what is that? And then you look at the Edomites, and I don't know how much you guys gone with the beastly men and all that kind of stuff too, but it never stops.
Yeah. I mean, even like with the lion faced men, I mean, I was looking at, so you got Ariel's here, and then I looked at another one of my Bibles. The NIV just says mighty men, or mighty
Like great champions,
warriors.
I think I've got it right
Yeah,
here.
something like that. And then like a couple of them were like, well, lion-like men, and then it was
Like best man.
lion-faced men, and it's like these. It just shows the idea of man, there's translation here, and almost the idea of there's importance here. Kind of was it who's old Michael? It was Michael Heisner, right? Said if it's weird, it's probably important. And
Hmm.
it's like here we go.
Yeah.
We've got a spot here that's weird. We probably should take some notice and look at it. So,
And
man, I just
two,
look. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, it's got to make sense the way it's worded too. Like if it was three lions, why wouldn't you just say that he just killed three lions? You know what I mean? It's two lion faced men, or Ariels or whatever the case, and then a lion.
Yeah,
And
I mean
just
that is.
like Benaiah, yeah, in that same I think a couple scriptures before that, Benaiah kills a goodly Egyptian. Now, certain translations do say a giant Egyptian. Certain do. But goodly is another one of those words because what is the description that we get of Saul? Saul was a goodly man. He was shoulders to head taller than everybody in the land. And then they use goodly again with Egyptian. Again, certain translations say giant. Also, one of David's sons, Chilead, is a goodly man, because David married 6 wives from Hebron. Hebron used to be Kiriath Arba, land father of Anak. That's where he married 6 of his wives, and then you see one of his sons becomes a goodly man. So it's these words, again, like we just said, if it doesn't make sense, there's something behind it.
All right. Well, I just looked at our time, and we're at about an hour here, and I'm pretty sure we haven't talked anything at all what we were going to talk about, or in that lovely little outline that I sent Adam earlier. I was like, hey, this is what we're going to talk about. And in proper redneck theologian fashion, we just asked random questions and went into it.
This is a bunch of interesting stuff, though. Yeah.
I mean, it's really cool. I mean, I'm really interested about the genealogy thing. And that was the same thing when we had talked on the phone, me and you, Adam, earlier. And it's like, the genealogy matters. And I'm like, you're right, because it wouldn't be in there written explicitly. And even though, we've got the genealogy of Jesus coming all the way back. And it's like, we know how that one matters. And so if that one matters, then other genealogies should also matter as well, just in different ways. And so before we rock and roll here, Adam, do you want to let everybody know where they can find you, or if you want to talk about how they can get your graphic novel or something like that? This is your moment to promote you.
Goodness gracious. Yeah. eadamfarris.substack.com. That's my blog. Really quick reads. I'll find something and I'll just dig in, and I always use supporting scripture and just try to find odd stuff. Fivestones.bigcartel.com is commerce page for my book. Great Fish is going to be coming out later this year. Very stoked about that. And then I'm on YouTube, Adam Farris, for the blogs that are just a little bit more in depth than I can actually talk about them. I'm online. I like to talk about this stuff. So you guys got questions, comments, concerns, holler at me.
Sweet. And I'll try to throw all those things down in the description, however that works. And yeah, man, I've had a lot of fun just kind of chatting with you about this stuff. And
yeah,
it's been really interesting to kind of think about. You got anything to close? Oh, you know what? Dang it. We never did a dad joke. Oh, that's like the second time I've messed that one up.
Well, look, why didn't the toilet paper cross the road?
Ugh. Why?
It's stuck in a crack.
That's a great way to end it right there. Thank you for listening to Raising the Wild Ones podcast, where you may have heard the best dad joke we've had yet. Thank you, Adam.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys for listening to Raising the Wild Ones podcast. I know me and Caleb are just a couple of redneck theologians, right? Kind of came up with that term a little while ago, and it's just kind of making us laugh, but that's really just what we are, right? Every single one of us is a theologian. Sit there and just think about the Bible, and me and Caleb are rednecks, so that makes us redneck theologians. And so we just thank you guys for listening to us. And if you want to just give us a holler and let us know about topics you may want to listen to, or things you may want to say, or if you have an idea for a guest host, or if you yourself want to be a guest host, just drop us a line. Just let us know. Just give us a ring on the old telly. Actually, not really. We don't have a cell phone number, right? But we do have an email, and you can send us an email, right, at raisingwildonespodcast@gmail.com. There'll be a link for that podcast down in the description. And so just kind of click on that and just let us know what you guys want to hear from us. And we like to hear from you guys too. We like to know what you guys think of our podcast. And so also just tell your friends, share it on social media. Just let people know when you're sitting down having a cup of coffee with your hunting buddies or fishing buddies. Just say, hey guys, listen to this podcast. It's these two rednecks, and they're kind of weird sometimes, but it's fine because they talk about some cool stuff. And so just let people know, and that's how the word gets out, and that's how it gets shared. So we just thank you guys so much for your support and for listening to us. And yeah, tune in next time for more from the Redneck Theologians.
Hey everybody, I just wanted to reach out and bring you some exciting news. Our Patreon is now live. Patreon is a way to support this podcast so we can keep it going. For $6 a month, which is the cost of a cup of coffee, you get exclusive content that is for members only. This includes special episodes, show notes, and early release of our upcoming episodes. As we grow, more will become available through our membership. Another exciting thing is that we will donate $1 out of the $6 membership fee to missions. This money will go into the hands of missionaries on the ground doing the Lord's work. We are working on this and will hopefully have a podcast episode where we interview the missionary soon, so stay tuned for this. So go to patreon.com/Raising the Wild Ones podcast, or click on the link to our Patreon site in the show notes below. Thank you for supporting this podcast, and God bless.